So when we talk about Galilei, born back in 1564, we often hear this title, right? The father of modern science.
We do.
But what does that really mean? It's not just that he was good at looking at stars, he actually changed the rules for how we look at the world.
That's the key. Before him, science was mostly about accepting what ancient thinkers like Aristotle wrote thousands of years ago.
You just believed it because they said it.
Exactly. And Galileo's genius was that he wasn't just smart. He had a revolutionary method. Take the idea of falling objects. Aristotle said heavier things fall faster. Everyone just accepted it.
But Galileo didn't.
No, he said, let's test it. He decided to experiment.
Okay, so let's get into that. Why was testing gravity so hard? I mean, we all hear the story about him dropping things from the Tower of Pisa. Why not just do that?
Well, that story is a great legend, but it's probably not true. And it highlights the big problem. Gravity is really, really fast. Things accelerate so quickly that with the tools they had in the 1600s, you just couldn't measure the difference accurately. A cannonball and a musket ball would seem to hit the ground at almost the same time.
So he needed a way to slow gravity down.
Exactly. And he did it with geometry. He built something called an inclined plane.
A ramp.
Basically, a very smooth, very gentle ramp. He'd roll a polished bronze ball down it. This effectively diluted gravity's force. The ball still accelerated, but it moved slowly enough that he could actually measure it.
That is clever. But what about a stopwatch? How do you time something precisely without a modern clock?
This is where you see his real ingenuity. He made a water clock. He had a big container of water with a tiny spout at the bottom.
Okay.
And for the exact time it took the ball to roll a certain distance, he would collect the water that flowed out. Then he'd weigh the water.
So the weight of the water stood in for time.
Precisely. The more water, the more time had passed. In other experiments, he even used his own pulse or, consistent musical beats to measure things. And this whole approach, measuring distance, using math to track the results, then running the experiment again, it was completely new. And it proved that all objects accelerate at the same rate, no matter their weight.
And that focus on measuring reality, on what you can actually see, is what put him on a collision course with the old way of thinking.
It absolutely did. And he took that same method from studying motion on Earth and, well, he pointed it at the heavens.
With the help of one key piece of technology.
The telescope. Around the early 1600s, he heard about this new invention from the Netherlands. But he didn't just copy it. He was a master craftsman with lenses.
He built a better one.
Much better. He ground his own high-quality glass and made telescopes that were way more powerful than anything else around.
And when he pointed that thing at the sky, the old view of a perfect, unchanging universe it shattered. What was the first thing he looked at that was totally different?
The moon. The old belief was that everything in the heavens was a perfect, smooth sphere.
A crystal ball, basically.
Right. But Galileo looked up and saw the moon wasn't smooth at all. It was rugged. It had deep craters, valleys, and huge mountains. He even figured out how tall the mountains were by measuring their shadows.
So it looked like Earth.
It looked exactly like Earth, which suggested the heavens were made of the same, imperfect stuff we are.
And that idea alone was a revolution. If the moon isn't perfect, maybe nothing else out there is. Which brings us to Venus.
Ah, Venus. His observations of Venus were probably the single most powerful piece of visual evidence against the old Earth-centered model.
What did he see?
He saw that Venus has phases, just like our moon. Sometimes it was a thin crescent, sometimes it was half-lit, and sometimes it was almost a full circle.
And why is that so important?
Because in the old geocentric model where Earth is at the center of everything, that's impossible.
Why?
Well, in that model, Venus has to be orbiting somewhere between us and the sun. If that's true, you could only ever see a crescent Venus because the lit-up side would always be facing away from us.
You'd never see it as full.
Never. The only way you can see a full Venus is if it orbits the sun, and sometimes the sun is between us and Venus. It was undeniable proof that Venus revolved around the sun, not the Earth.
Okay, that's a huge piece of evidence. But the discovery that really made a splash involved Jupiter.
Right. He saw 4 little bright spots right next to the planet.
Just spots.
At first. But he watched them over several nights. And he saw them moving consistently around Jupiter. He realized what he was seeing.
Moons.
Moons. Orbiting another planet. And that was the final nail in the coffin for the idea that everything in the universe had to orbit the Earth.
Because if Jupiter has its own little system of moons,
then the Earth isn't the one and only center of motion in the cosmos. He published all of this in a book called The Starry Messenger. And he made a very smart political move.
What was that?
He named the moons the Medicean stars, after the powerful Medici family who ruled the region.
Was that just to flatter them?
It was more like buying life insurance. He knew he was stirring up trouble. By dedicating his biggest discovery to one of the most powerful families in Europe, he was getting their protection. He needed a shield.
All this evidence, Jupiter's moons, the phases of Venus, it completely convinced him of the Copernican theory.
The sun-centered model.
Yeah.
He argued the universe operated by the language of math, something you could figure out with observation, not by just reading an ancient text.
And this is what we call the Copernican revolution. It wasn't just changing our address in the cosmos, it was a whole new way of thinking.
Exactly. It moved the whole conversation from philosophy to measurable, predictable mathematics. And that, of course, is what got him into so much trouble.
Right. The conflict with the Catholic Church, which was the main authority on, well, on everything at the time. What was their core problem with his ideas?
It's complex. It wasn't that the church was just anti-science. The issue was biblical literalism. Galileo was a religious man himself, but he argued that the Bible was written to teach people how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. He said God gave us brains and senses to figure out nature for ourselves.
But the church saw it differently. They saw his ideas as a direct contradiction of Scripture.
Yes. There are passages in the Bible that seem to describe a stationary earth with the sun moving across the sky. For them, challenging that was challenging the Word of God and their authority to interpret it.
So things got tense.
Very. In 1616, it all boiled over. Church leaders in Rome officially declared the idea of a moving earth to be false. Galileo got his first official warning.
A warning to do what?
He was told he could no longer hold or publicly defend the sun-centered system. Period.
Wow. After all that work, what did he do?
He backed down publicly. He stayed quiet about astronomy for years and worked on other things. He was probably waiting, hoping for a new pope who might be a bit more open-minded.
And eventually he thought that moment had come.
He did, which led to him publishing his masterpiece in 1632, the dialogue concerning the two chief world systems. He thought the new pope, Urban VIII, who had been a friend, would protect him.
And the book was structured as a debate, right?
A conversation between three people, one arguing for the new sun-centered system, one for the old earth-centered system, and a neutral guy. It's a brilliant way to lay out the arguments.
But he made a huge political mistake in how he wrote it.
A disastrous one. The character defending the old system was named Simplicio.
Which basically means simpleton.
Yes. And his arguments were written to be foolish and easy to knock down. It looked like he was openly mocking the traditional view.
And not just that, he wrote the book in Italian, the language of the people, not in academic Latin.
Which meant everyone could read it. His ideas spread like wildfire. The church authorities were furious. They saw it as him thumbing his nose at the 1616 warning.
The Pope couldn't protect him anymore.
No. The Inquisition was launched. In 1633, Galileo, old and sick by this point, was ordered to Rome to stand trial for heresy.
And that trial was intense. They basically confronted him with the warning from years before and accused him of disobedience.
The threat of torture was always there, even if they didn't use it. And under that immense pressure, he was forced to perform what's called an abjuration.
Meaning he had to take it all back.
Everything. He had to kneel in front of the court and publicly renounce his own work. He had to swear that the theory of the earth moving was false and cursed. It was a total public surrender.
What was his sentence?
Life in prison. But because he was old and in poor health, they changed it to house arrest. He spent the rest of his life confined to his villa near Florence.
And he was forbidden from publishing anything else about astronomy. His books were put on a list of forbidden texts.
Yes, but even then you couldn't stop his mind from working. In those last 8 years of his life, under house arrest, he became completely blind.
But he kept working.
He did. He wrote what might be his most important book for physics, The Two New Sciences. It had nothing to do with astronomy. It was all about the laws of motion, how things fall, how materials break.
The very things he studied with those ramps decades earlier.
Exactly. He had to dictate his ideas to his students, who wrote them down. Then they had to smuggle the manuscript out of Italy to get it published.
That's incredible dedication.
It is. And when Galileo died in 1642, that work on motion became foundational. Isaac Newton used Galileo's ideas on acceleration and inertia as the starting blocks for his own laws of universal gravitation.
So that's the real legacy. He laid the groundwork for everything that came next in physics.
That's why he's the father of modern science. He gave us the method and the first set of rules.
And it took centuries for the church to officially come around. His books were on the forbidden list until 1835.
A very long time. And it wasn't until 1992, almost 360 years later, that Pope John Paul II formally expressed regret for how Galileo was treated, finally closing that chapter.
His story really proves that evidence, no matter how much you try to suppress it, eventually wins.
It does. His real courage was insisting that we have to understand the world through logic and observation, no matter what powerful traditions say. It all comes back to asking, how can I measure this, instead of just asking, what am I supposed to believe?
Follow the evidence. That's always the path to discovery. Good luck with your studies.